What is a modern classic? I define a modern classic as a written or visual expression that is a breakthrough piece in its genre, serves as a standard of excellence, is thought-provoking, has universal themes, is an expression of truth, and is memorable. For this project, I decided to look into recent movies, and the movie that immediately stood out to me as a breakthrough piece in its genre was Joker. 2019 Joker movie starring Joaquin Phoenix as Arthur Fleck, to be specific. This is truly a breakthrough movie and performance for several reasons. First, the acting. Joaquin Phoenix is nothing short of amazing. According to Oakley Burt, the arts editor of the Utah Daily Chronicle, Phoenix delivers a chilling performance as the Joker. He breathes new life into the character through his gritty, raw, powerfully unsettling portrayal. His intensity draws you in and fixes your eyes on the screen, even during the film's uncomfortable moments. Secondly, the plot of the movie itself. Burt comments that it is a masterpiece, breaking the mold by going against traditional comic book adaptations. His adaptation is bold, realistic, and stands apart from the DC Cinematic Universe films. This is a key point for me. It is a breakthrough in that most superhero movies are about the hero, Batman, Superman, etc., and do not star the villain. The next criterion for a modern classic is that it serves as a standard of excellence, and the Joker absolutely does, particularly in the acting, something I briefly mentioned before. I know what some of you are thinking. Heath Ledger did a phenomenal job in The Dark Knight, and I agree 100%. However, Ledger, will give a tremendous performance, it was pretty much in line with how the audience imagines the Joker to be. According to Sam Stevenson, Ledger enters his Gotham as a criminal. He's smart, cunning, and psychotic, whereas Phoenix's Joker is a mentally ill man who is a failed comedian and works as a clown for rent. He doesn't even sound or appear to have any characteristics of a Joker, except his painful laugh. I think listening to the two Jokers laugh really drives home this difference. Sam Stevenson said, Ledger's laugh is demented, sporadic, and in short bursts and intervals. He's enjoying himself, whereas with Phoenix, he's in pain. It boils down to the idea that Ledger's Joker kills for fun, for sport, more in line with the traditional Joker of the comic book, whereas everything Phoenix's Joker did was merely an unplanned consequence to his actions. For example, his subway murders leading to the working class revolts was never Phoenix's goal. So while both Ledger and Phoenix's Jokers were excellent, Phoenix was able to do more with the character than be what audiences expect a villain to be. Next, the Joker is a modern classic because it is thought-provoking. In fact, it was almost considered controversial before its release because some feared it may inspire copycat violence. One benefit of a little controversy is that it gets people thinking, which gets some talking, which can lead to some change. What really got people talking from the Joker was the fact that this is one of the first times that the main character did truly evil, terrible things, but we almost sympathize and understand what drove him to act the way that he did. So is the Joker a hero or a villain? Well, that is obvious. He is a villain and does terrible things. Just because you have a mental illness or a terrible upbringing or society has failed you, you cannot start killing people. However, I think that this movie has definitely blurred the lines and helped many realize things are not just black and white, good or bad. I think I found something interesting in the article by Evan Gar. He quotes former DC editor Stuart Moore as saying, "As comics become more like soap operas, moral ambiguity is increasingly pronounced. It is often hard to tell the good guys from the bad guys, and perhaps writers and directors think that they are now able to blur these lines as, according to Peter Gutierrez, moviegoers these days appear to have a higher tolerance for both bad behavior from the good guys and heroic attributes from the bad guys. When we feel sympathy for the bad guy, this makes us think. Elizabeth McNeil says, monster, evil, demon. It makes us feel safe to categorize villains in this way. It fits with our view of the world. They are obviously monstrous, and we have nothing in common with them. What's more, they will be discovered and punished. We will rejoice when this happens. What happens when those who commit crimes are humanized? All of a sudden, we lose this sense of certainty or safety in the world. They could be anyone. They could be our next-door neighbor, or even worse, ourselves when pushed to the limit. This realization not only has the capacity to make the antagonist more terrifying because they are possible and relatable, but can also throw our own morals into disarray, because sometimes we end up feeling not only sympathy for those who commit the darkest and most deplorable acts, but actually rooting for them. Our sense of justice, of order, begins to falter. It is an unsettling position as a reader and a masterful feat by an author. And lastly, an article from The Economist weighs in on this topic, claiming, when this finally happens, the Joker is presented not as the malign agent of chaos he is in the Batman comics, but as a V for Vendetta-style anti-capitalist revolutionary. Now, having read that graphic novel in this class, I know you are familiar with the moral ambiguity and debate. In fact, this overlap with V for Vendetta and other stories brings me to the next criteria for a modern classic. It has universal themes. According to Mary Gormandy White, a universal theme is one that focuses on an element of the human condition and deals with concepts or concerns of interest to members of the human race, regardless of where they live, their background, personality type, or other unique factors. In other words, universal themes appeal to or have meaning to people regardless of individual cultural differences. Universal themes focus on common aspects of existence that in some way impact all people. The fact that they can be relevant to everyone is what makes them universal ideas. And the Joker is filled with many themes. These are just a few that spoke to me, but undoubtedly there are others that spoke to others. These factors listed here, combined with Arthur's mental illness, help the audience to understand Arthur, why he acts the way he does. Not many movies today look at mental illness from this perspective. Emma Kerwin wrote, "The first two-thirds of Joker set up a story about how we continuously fail the mentally ill, from the system, which cuts funding and doesn't actually care to listen, to society, who refuses to understand and instead grows irritated or jeers at their illness-specific shortcomings. It's close to home." James O'Neill continues with the idea when he says, "The movie forces us to hold a mirror up to reflect upon ourselves, our country, and our potential role in the events that transpire in the movie. It forces people to reflect on those they may know or see in their lives who may be struggling with a mental disorder or poverty, which may have them potentially feel guilty about how isolated and powerless that person may be, how we may have contributed to their feeling invisible and unheard, but also feeling somewhat powerless to help their situation. It also forces those of us who are not impoverished or currently suffering from mental illness to reflect on actions we may have taken, which may make us feel bad about ourselves because we may be doing okay sitting in middle class or higher, yet feel guilty for being there when others are suffering so despairingly without power or hope." This is the perfect transition to the next characteristic of a modern classic. It is an expression of truth, for all the reasons I just mentioned and more. While we may have come a long way since the days of putting people in mental institutions, electric shock therapy, or lobotomies, it is sad that there is still a large stigma or negative connotation around the concept of mental illness. This image from the movie really says it all for me. The worst part about a mental illness is people expect you to behave as if you don't. Mental illness is invisible. Anxiety, depression, low IQ, OCD, and the like are not something that you can usually see when you look at a person, but more so manifest themselves in their actions. It is easier for people to label you as different rather than to understand why you act the way you do. People are judged, criticized, and mocked before they even get a chance, and this movie demonstrates that. One critic wrote in their article why Joker is the must-see movie of 2019. That the movie's intent is not to scare you, it just wants to show what could happen to someone with severe mental illness when society rejects them despite their best efforts. I want to stress the could happen part because the last thing I want anyone to take away from this is that all people with mental illness are killers, or that there is any excuse for the Joker's actions. But it does humanize what happened. As Jim Vejvoda said, the Joker, the film, may ask viewers to empathize with its central protagonist, but doesn't ask us to forgive him for his increasingly evil choices. As many real-world parallels and inspirations can be uncomfortably drawn from Arthur's descent into violent madness, the film still knows he's deranged and not to be romanticized, merely understood. For all of the reasons, and then some, the Joker definitely fits this last criterion of a modern classic. It is memorable. If for no other reason than this amazing dance scene.